Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hola, lady love. Welcome back to the potty. We're back in the HQ studio, my home office / guest bedroom, and it feels really, really nice to be connecting with you from my norm, from my predictable place. I thought I would actually open this potty with a little bit of what is going on in my own world in terms of my growth, which feels a little bit vulnerable to do because it's very fresh, intuitive drop-ins that I'm about to share with you. But here we are. This is what's most alive for me right now. And there's a real embodiment here of me allowing myself to be present with what's here, allowing myself to be adaptable, to change my mind, to access a deeper understanding around what I'm feeling and what I'm sensing at the moment, if that were to shift and change. But here's what I am just in the very early stages of receiving intuitively at the moment and loving. Spaciousness is the word. And there's so much irony around this because in 2020, or at the end of 2019, really, when I set my intention for 2020, spaciousness was the word that came up. Not the type of spaciousness I'd anticipated that we experienced as a collective, but spaciousness nonetheless. And it feels quite cool to be sensing that I'm coming full circle and I'm ready to really drop the level of responsibility and the intensity of ambition and direction. And intensity is an important word there, the intensity of ambition and direction. I was watching the stories of a business coach that I follow recently, and she was talking about the full moon eclipse and how we were coming to the close of really like a 2-year period of time that began in November 2021. And this was a particularly meaningful piece of information for me because I've never consciously sat down and done a reflection of a 2-year period. For me, it's often been 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but not much more than that. And what I got to realize when I created the space to just ponder that and reflect was almost every piece of my life that I am so incredibly proud of and that lights me up inside has come to fruition in the last 2 years. And that's included healing that I've needed to do to be able to access what I now have. It's included a lot of head down, bum up, hard work, like being in the mess. And I'll elaborate a little bit on this in a minute. And of course, every part of my existence up until November 2021, where this window opened, contributed to that as well. But the last 2 years has really felt like there's been this other level open up to me. And what I'd maybe been working towards for a decade has come to fruition and has actually happened for me. And as part of that, there's been a lot of responsibility, and it's been really quite essential for me to have this intensity around direction, around ambition, around key projects that I'm focusing on in my life and making aligned compromises so that they can happen. Yeah. So some examples around this, like I've relocated interstate. And for those of you who are longtime listeners, I've talked about a lot of what that entailed across the podcast and how where I first arrived and then when the floods came through and how I had to relocate and I wasn't sure where I wanted to live and the journey that that has been through to be sitting here recording this podcast at, I think probably maybe to the day, actually 10 months of having really landed and grounded in here on the Sunshine Coast, with grounded or grounding being one of my key focus words that I set for this year of 2023. So that's been one piece. Another piece has been really, I'm just going to say it like it was, like working my ass off to set these foundations in my business to get to a point where it's really starting to feel easy. And it's really starting to feel like the work is paying off, and I'm not needing to always be creating or building new structures and bringing in a new piece that's like essential to making all the other pieces I've already brought in really function and work well together. And so that has felt amazing. And it has required my business to be front and center with a couple of other things for the last 2 years. And so November 2021 was when I decided I was leaving Victoria and moving. I also closed a relationship, and I also made the decision that I wanted to grow my business. It was at a level where it was coasting along and things were good. And I loved what I was doing, and I was helping women. And when I was really honest with myself, I was able to tap in and find that I had a greater contribution, I had a greater creative expression, and a greater impact that I wanted to give to the world. And so some really big decisions were made at that time that have totally transformed what my life looks like 2 years later, in comparison to almost exactly that timeline that this coach was talking about of the 2 years. And so it feels really, really expansive to be receiving these drop-ins intuitively of don't fill the space. Nothing else is required right now. Play, adventure, have fun, turn up pleasure. Yeah, more space for pleasure, and really actually pausing to enjoy the richness of everything, not only that I've created, but that I have lent into. And oh my gosh, like met so much fear and so much resentment and so much resistance and so much, this is bullshit. This isn't fair. It shouldn't be this hard, in so many different areas of my life, and found surrender, found acceptance, and found the courage to lean in and look at, okay, where do I need to take my personal power to another level? Where do I need to step up to another level? Where do I need to really commit and devote and match my behaviors and my actions and my energy to what it is that I say I want to create, versus talking about how I want to create it and that I don't have it, or that it's really hard. Yeah. And it's interesting because I thought at the start of this year, I was about to arrive to where I'm arriving now. And this is the thing with, human evolution and our growth journey. And when we've got a clear vision for our life and we're devoted to moving through that, even when the hard, messy, really challenging pieces drop in and we feel like there's hurdles or blocks and we don't know what to do or how to do it, is that it can be really unpredictable. And I speak to so many women, right, that feel like they're in this position where they want to say, haven't I done enough? Like, shouldn't this be enough? Can't I have some relief now? And building a business, my gosh, is the epitome of that. Especially building a business for the first time, where you're building a product or a service offering from scratch, as your pure expression. And as a service provider, you're then also providing that. Like you're not only building it, creating it, marketing it, selling it, offering it, you're then in the seat delivering it as well. And so the first 3 years in business are wild. And no doubt there's more to come, but it feels so amazing to really be arriving at this place where the vision I've had for a long time is here. And there's space for me to lean back and really enjoy that and have a slower, more spacious season before I do go again. And I do lean into more direction, more ambition again. Yeah. And so what I'm sensing and what my intuition keeps confirming to me is less of a growth focus. And I spoke about this a few podcasts ago, like back in July, I think it was already on my radar, and it just keeps deepening and deepening and deepening. And I'm trusting it. My comfort zone is actually growth. And my comfort zone is introspection and self-reflection and evolution. And so for me, this is actually meeting a little bit of an edge around, oh, we're just going to consolidate for a while. Yeah. I'm not going to be looking for new opportunities for a while. I'm just going to be in life and immerse myself in what is already here. And when I really tune into that, even though it hasn't been my comfort zone, it feels so delicious. And so I'm noticing like events or opportunities or creative downloads are coming through. And I'm getting to note that they're things that are aligned to my values, and that I'm going to allow some space before I engage with that. And I can, create a note section in my phone where it's all going, so it's there for when I'm ready. But for the time being, it feels so, so good to just be in life. So that's a little update of the drop-ins that I'm receiving every day at the moment is, do less. I think we can start the conversation of this podcast topic now. It's one that's been coming up in coaching the last few weeks, which is really what's prompted me to bring it to the podcast in a real snippet way so that you can benefit from this too. The concept I want to talk about, and that I've been teaching the women inside Reveal and Rise, is fiercely loving yourself. A great place to start here easily is defining or explaining what I mean by fiercely loving yourself, because when we use language, it can have so many different connotations. Yeah. Which is why communication is one of my favorite topics to teach on as well. But even a word like fierce, what that means to one person could mean the complete opposite to another. So let's talk about it in this context of fiercely loving yourself. And when I talk about loving yourself, caring for yourself, treating yourself really well. Yeah. As opposed to judging, self-shaming, critiquing, putting yourself down, rejecting yourself, abandoning yourself. So when we're fiercely loving ourselves, it's when we're a full body yes. We're full body devoted. We are 2 feet over the line, the yes or the no line. We've got 2 feet on the yes side of the line to giving ourselves what it is that we need to feel nourished, to feel regulated and calm, and to thrive. Not just when it's convenient or when we feel in flow with that, or when we feel like there's time and space available to do that, but also when it's inconvenient. Yeah. Also when we'd rather not. And this is when it actually counts and matters most, right? So some of the misconceptions around loving ourselves well, treating ourselves well, caring for ourselves, is that it should feel good and it should feel easy if it's meant to be. Yeah. And that if it's something that we don't feel like we really want to do, or we can't really be bothered with, or it's really difficult to fit in, well, then it must not meant to be. It's just not meant to happen. Right. And there's this other misconception, and this is really where the coaching conversation started from inside Reveal and Rise, of it should be the choice that I want to make. Right. When in actual fact, often fiercely loving ourselves is accepting and surrendering to what we need versus what we want. And I've had so many instances of this over the past. I was going to talk about this at the end, but I'm going to jump to it now. Over the past 6 weeks, right? There has been a lot happening in my world. I've been traveling. I've been around people nonstop. In the 6 weeks, I think 7 weeks, I think I calculated I've moved location 12 times. Yeah. And for the majority of that time, I haven't been in my home. I haven't been sleeping in my own bed, haven't had the comforts that I'm used to in my normal everyday lifestyle that works really well for me. And so some examples of that have been, when I got to my sister's, I realized and remembered that the internet connection there isn't strong enough for me to run group coaching calls. And some of the calls I run will have, up to 100 people on them. And so it's pretty bloody important that the internet is working. But to be honest, even one of the podcast interviews I ran just with myself and another, it wasn't up to scratch. And so I realized I was going to need to travel down to my mum's place, which is a 4-hour round trip for my sisters, to be able to provide the service at a level that is okay with me. And so that was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to be around my niece and nephew the whole time, nonstop. It also meant that I had to factor that in as a time allocation and energy allocation for my week. And so that meant that when the weekend came and I had promised and committed to one of my girlfriends who is exhausted with 2 young children, and her partner is exhausted, and he was having a weekend away to recharge, I had said to her, I want to come and help you, whatever that looks like, whether it's just some social interaction or whether, I do some cooking for you. So it's really helpful and there's less to do in the week ahead with meal prep. Let's do that. And I had to take back my commitment. Yeah. Because I could tell that I was at my capacity with investing my time, my energy, my love, and my attention in ways that I hadn't anticipated I was going to need to. Each time I moved between my mum and my sisters, I was packing up like my food, my office, my suitcase, all of these things. And so that was not the choice I wanted to make. It was really annoying to me. It was really frustrating to me. And I really wanted to love her well. But ultimately, what I got to see and what I could predict is that if I didn't fiercely love myself first in that scenario, I wasn't going to have anything left to give. And another reason why this conversation came up in coaching was around, burnout and exhaustion and overwhelm and stress and feeling stretched so thin and like there's just not enough time in the day. Right. And the woman who brought this question was like, why is this still happening? Like, I'm taking care of myself. I'm loving myself. And the conversation we got to have was, yes, you are, but you're not fiercely loving yourself, right? Some other examples. One of the things I really wanted to do whilst I was back home in Melbourne was visit a community space. It's called Centre of You in Melbourne, in South Yarra, Prahran or Windsor, on Chapel Street in Melbourne. I think it might be Prahran. Check it out if you're in Melbourne. It's amazing. They run incredible events there. And I'd spent $60 on a Keirtown ticket. And this was something I wanted to do like 2 months before I even went to Melbourne. I knew it was like high up on the list of things that would bring me a lot of joy and connect me back in with community that I hadn't seen in a little while as well. And when that evening came, it was way too much, again, for this unanticipated spread of my time, energy, love, and attention that had taken place since being there. And as much as it pained me and really, really frustrated me, and I felt really sad about it, and it was one of the harder calls that I've made in a long time, I really just had to let that experience go and realize if I want to feel good, and if I want to feel alive and like every day isn't something I'm dragging myself through and that it's struggle and that it's hard, then the decision I need to make is one I don't want to make. Yeah. And I'm not going to go to that ceremony, which was really difficult. And ultimately, where my decision stemmed from was I really value feeling good. I really value ease in my day. I really value like feeling an abundance of time and space. I really value being present. I really value feeling calm, peaceful, and regulated in my nervous system. I really value feeling confident in who I am and what I'm contributing to the world and to the people in my life because I'm not depleted. Yeah. And so that was another hard decision I had to make. When I went to Bali, I really wanted to go for 3 weeks. But I knew if I went for 3 weeks, that would have meant I was away for all 7 weeks instead of just 6 of the 7 weeks. I also had a beautiful girlfriend visiting here from the US, and I wanted to be available here to spend some time with her. And so that was another aligned sacrifice I made to fiercely love myself well. Yeah. Some from the past when I had chronic fatigue and was experiencing chronic fatigue. I moved back in with both my parents at different times so that I could be supported, so that I could have the incidental social interaction that I needed, so that I could have help. Yeah. And so that my finances weren't depleted in a way that didn't necessarily need to be. Yeah, that was something that was really important to me, even though living independently in my late 20s and early 30s was also really important to me. I also moved back in with my parents when I started my business because I was paying rent at a clinic and I didn't want to also pay rent where I was living because it would have meant using my savings. And I also didn't want to go back to full-time employment. And so I could see there was, this period and this season when I was starting my business and refining my offerings and building my skills as a coach and understanding how a business runs, that this aligned sacrifice was really important to fiercely love myself well. Yeah. And so another point that's coming up here is that it doesn't last forever. One more for you. I've just come back from Melbourne. It's mid-November and I won't be going back for Christmas. And so that is, when I talk about that intuitive drop-in at the beginning of this episode, that's an example of it, right? Like I would love to go home for Christmas, even just for 24 hours or 48 hours. But the drop-in that I'm getting is just like land. Cultivate more home. Yeah. Love and attention on the home. Slowness. Yeah. Spaciousness. Leaving time open, leaving time empty, being in the moment. And so whilst that's something I really want to do, I can hear and I can feel and I can see that what I need is to land and have space to really soak up the present moment of life without needing to be doing something or going somewhere, even though that would feel really enjoyable as well. What fiercely loving yourself is not, right? So I've just talked a lot about what the connotation or the meaning of fierce is in this context of this concept I'm talking and teaching about. It's not aggressive, right? So it doesn't feel blunt and rigid and fast and forced and like barbed wire and like this is in and this is out and no and absolutely not, right? Fierceness actually holds surrender. It actually holds a softness, right? And so when I talked about some of those examples, I shared how they felt annoying, like really fucking annoying and inconvenient and frustrating. And when we go into those emotions and feel them and express them, they then don't need to rule our experience around making choices that we need, even though they're not entirely what we want. Yeah. Fierceness is also not blaming others or projecting onto others when you realize that they've benefited from your people pleasing or from your overgiving, your helper mode or your fixer mode. Right. And so it's not about punishing other people or seeing them as unintelligent or you're right and they're wrong. I want you to think of this fierceness around loving and caring for yourself as the lioness that's protecting her cubs. Yeah. Only you're the cub. So you're not protecting yourself from other people crossing over your boundaries. Fiercely loving yourself will actually be you learning with yourself what are your boundaries. And if you've been here a while, you will have heard me say before, all boundaries begin with you. The standard you hold in the relationship with yourself is subconsciously teaching others around you what is and isn't acceptable, what you will and will not tolerate, right? And so when you begin 2 feet over the line, stepping into fiercely loving yourself, this is with yourself. It's not against others, even though I want to empathize. It can definitely feel like that because when you're making shifts and changes around what you need, living out of what you need versus the immediate gratification and like the impulse of just doing what you want all the time and then ending up chaotic, burnt out, your focus is spread so thin that none of the key things that are important to you in life are able to grow momentum and move forward because you're not being consistent and present in those things. You're being unpresent, if that's a word, in multiple things. You're like dipping in and out. And so when you're making these changes to start living from what you need to nurture and love and care and treat yourself really well, that is going to challenge some people, especially if it means you're stepping out of people pleasing. You're giving to yourself before you're giving to them. You're helping yourself before you're helping others. Some of those people are going to have this experience of, what the fuck? Where'd she go? Now I have to do this shit for myself. What do you mean you're saying no to me? What do you mean you're not going to do this codependent thing with me anymore, where we try and fix each other's problems? Yeah. And we feel good about each other because we're there for each other instead of being there for ourselves. And so you can get some pushback and you can get some misunderstanding, and that's okay, right? But really remembering that this fierce energy, it's you in the lioness role with you as the cub. It's you protecting your own emotional well-being. Yeah. A couple of areas this came up in the coaching sessions that I've been running, to just briefly give you an idea of where this might be playing out for you. The first was through the lens of obligation, right? So this woman is in an extremely challenging season of life with her family, with really unwell family members, as well as the loss of a family member, and all of the tasks and the important focuses and responsibilities that come along with those scenarios when they're playing out in our life. Yeah. And how that challenges us. And so where this was showing up for her, yeah, was, what am I missing? Like, I'm doing the best that I can to love myself, and I'm still burnt out. I'm still overwhelmed. I feel good, but then I feel shit. I feel energized, but then I feel exhausted. I feel happy, but then I feel anxious and sad and stressed, and like everything is out of control, right? And so this is where we got to have the conversation of the difference between loving yourself, which would fit more into that category of stepping in and out. So yeah, when it's convenient and when there happens to be time, that's when I'll prioritize myself a bit, versus fiercely loving yourself, of getting really clear on what are actually the standards that need to be taking place in my life so that I can show up for others consistently, so that I'm not sacrificing my own well-being and my own joy in life. Because when we sacrifice at that level, what happens is a point in time comes where we begin asking the question, what's even the point to living? Like, what's the point to life? I just feel like I'm getting up every day, going through the motions. Yeah. And so our ability to experience joy, to live from our values, to give to ourselves, actually energizes us in a way that makes it sustainable to care for others in a way that is free from resentment, free from feeling trapped or suffocated, free from feeling like you're in a rat race or on the wheel. Yeah, on the mouse wheel. And it's just going round and round and round, and you don't feel like there's a lot of intention or control around what's happening. You're just having to show up to all of these reactive instances, and you're feeling really reactive within yourself as well. And so some of those standards might look like coming back to like the bare minimum non-negotiable basics, right? Of how much sleep am I getting? What's my state like as I'm going to bed at night? And what needs to happen for that to be a state where I'm feeling calm and I'm feeling relaxed enough to get really deeply nourishing sleep and to wake feeling refreshed? Yeah. Moving your body. Yeah. Where is that fitting into the week, and how is that happening? And what's your bare minimum standard around that? The types of relationships you're engaging with and the communication you're receiving, how you feel before you go and spend time in those relationships, the content of what's being discussed and experienced when you're present with that person. How do you feel when you're leaving? And really getting clean and clear about what are the standards I want to have around how I feel in my relationships, what qualities are present in my relationships, not only what I'm giving, but also what I'm receiving. Where do I maybe need to have some conversations and ask for more of what it is that I want? Discover what the capacity is in that relationship so that if it's not there, I can adjust how much of my time, energy, love, and attention that relationship is receiving, right? Where is it that I'm on the receiving end of behavior that is just not okay with me? And I've been taking it because maybe this person's having a hard time, but actually it's enough now because it's having a really painful, dysfunctional impact on my life and my emotional well-being. Yeah. Where is it that I am living out of people pleasing because I don't know if I'm a good person unless somebody else is always validating that, or I can come up with a list of tasks and behaviors that I've done that are, potent enough for me to convince myself that it's likely I'm a good person if I've done all these things, right? So this lens of obligation, I'm obligated to be there. I'm obligated to do that. I have to do this. I should be doing that. I don't have a choice about this. All of that language is going to be showing you where you are investing your time, energy, love, and attention based on this perception of obligation. And that will definitely get in the way of you fiercely loving yourself. The other lens that has come up through coaching as well is this desire to heal and grow even more, right? And so this woman had this conversation with me of, I can see, I'm not doing this anymore, and I'm not reacting in this way, and I'm not falling in a heap in this way, and I'm not feeling anxious about this. And when I go and do this, I'm not feeling stressed and I'm not worrying about it. And I'm not taking the attitude of oh my God, another thing. And when is this going to end? Right. So she's feeling more calm. She's feeling more responsive, and she's feeling more grounded in how she approaches those aspects of her life. Right. And I can see there's more I could be doing. I can see there's more room for improvement. I want to get better. Yeah. I want to have even more in my life, which is beautiful and is probably going to be, a conflict that a lot of women face into initially when they value growth. Yeah. I have this big, beautiful vision for my life, and I can see there's more that can be progressed in it. So I just want to be at it. And the conversation we had in this instance was how important it is to actually stop and celebrate yourself along the way. Yeah. To acknowledge how far you've already come, even though you can see exactly where you want to go next. You can even pinpoint the exact skill you need to work on refining or acquiring so that you can get to where you want to go. Yeah. And so we talked about how fiercely loving ourselves in this instance is not always striving and reaching for the next thing. How can we actually deeply acknowledge and really have rituals, intentional rituals that don't have to be big, but very intentional rituals to celebrate and acknowledge ourselves? Yeah, there's a whole module on this in my short course, Responding to Overwhelm. It is so important because if we're not able to do that, we're still living from this perfectionist, overachieving, my value is outside of me, go, 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 do. I'm not enough as I am. And it might be in a more subtle way than where you began your healing from, but it's still there. Yeah, there's these threads at this new level to heal of those subconscious patterns. And what happens is when we don't take the time to acknowledge and celebrate ourselves for how far we've come, we actually break trust with ourselves. We break the rapport and connection we have with our subconscious and our intuition. And we can potentially reignite some of these wounds of our inner child has, of not being good enough, of failing, of not being lovable exactly how she is. And so what I've personally found over the last couple of years, in building a business over 3 years, is the exact thing, ironically, that energizes and allows me to more easily access the next level is pausing and having gratitude and deep, almost like this deep level of honoring, reverence, worship for how far I've already come and how proud I am of myself in that. There can be both, my love. You can know where you want to go next and be able to see the exact path you're going to take there, or the questions you'll need to ask to find out the exact path. And you can be deeply present in the now, acknowledging yourself. And this is so important, right? So it was quite a funny conversation at times with this client, because she kept checking in with me and saying, okay, so are you sure there's not something I need to do? Are you sure there's not like a next step forward, right? Because the way this question came up too was like from a stuck state. Yeah, from feeling really stagnant and stuck, which our subconscious is so freaking intelligent that it will create that energetic or physical state in the body when there's something for us to pause and pay attention to, so that we are fiercely loving ourselves. And, you know, in the end, the way that I worded this for her was, if you need to know what the next step is, it's to celebrate yourself. It's to very intentionally create a ritual or create an experience that is in honor of you. And so, yeah, we had a good little giggle about that for sure. All right, love. I think that's enough for now to be digested. What I really wanted you to take away from this was that there's a difference between loving yourself when it's convenient, when it feels easy, when it feels like what you want to do. What will take your healing and growth to the next level is when you step into fiercely loving yourself when it's inconvenient, when it's hard, when it's what you need rather than what you want, when it's not ideal, and when it asks you to have really scary conversations, yeah, or to take really scary steps forward. Okay.
Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.